The Conjuring, Last Rites. The Warrens' darkest case, a haunting that still tears the line between belief and doubt. This is the story of a family that fought the forces of darkness for 16 long years. Inside their Pennsylvania home, shadows moved on their own. Walls shook with violent force, whispers bled through the silence. But worst of all, the unseen presence unleashed a brutal assault. Ice-cold hands clawed at their skin, ripped at their clothes, and forced itself upon them, pressing, groping, violating their bodies in ways that left them shaking, bleeding, and broken. And what made this case more disturbing? There weren't just one, but 4 demons dwelling in that house. That's why Ed and Lorraine called it one of their darkest cases, until 1974. Because when another family moved into the same house, they felt nothing. No voices, no shadows, no fear. Was this evil after the Smurls for a reason? Or something far darker?
And that's exactly why we chose to examine this case. We started this channel to bring you real stories, the ones that blur the line between truth and legend. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next one.
In 1973, Hurricane Agnes ripped through Pennsylvania and left behind massive destruction. For Jack and Janet Smurl, it was more than a storm. It was the day their home, the only house they had built together, was destroyed. Overnight, everything was gone. Now they start searching for a new place. For nearly a year, they moved from one house to another, hoping to find something they could finally call home. But nothing felt right. And finally, they found it. An aging duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. It was bigger, affordable, and felt like the perfect solution. But the moment they unpacked their boxes, the house began unpacking its secrets. Jack and Janet moved in with their 2 young daughters, Heather and Dawn. Jack's parents, John and Mary, lived in the other half of the duplex. At first, life seemed normal, but within weeks, strange things started happening. Drawers slid open and shut on their own. Tools vanished and turned up in strange places. Rocking chairs creaked back and forth without anyone near them. Radios blasted music even though they weren't plugged in. By 1975, their daughter Dawn began waking up terrified, running to her parents' room in the middle of the night. When Jack asked her what was wrong, she said there were people floating in her bedroom. The family tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was stress, maybe faulty wiring, maybe just bad luck. But deep down, they knew something was not right. In 1977, Janet gave birth to twin daughters, Karen and Shannon. And almost instantly, the house turned darker. Furniture moved on its own. Dog growled at shadows no one could see. Cold winds tore through locked rooms, as if new life had awakened something unholy. One day, Janet was alone in the basement doing laundry. She heard a voice whisper her name, Janet. At first, she thought she was mistaken, but then she heard it again, this time from directly behind her. Weeks later, Janet once again found herself home alone in the house. She was ironing in the kitchen when she felt a sudden blast of cold air. Standing just a few feet away was a shape, a figure made of black, smoke-like substance. It had the outline of a person, but his face was featureless. As Janet stared, paralyzed, then suddenly it began to move towards her and passed straight through her body before vanishing. Then came one of the most disturbing events of all. Jack woke one night to find himself paralyzed. Crawling onto his bed was a grotesque figure, a woman with the face of an old hag, but the body of a younger woman covered in sores, with red eyes and decayed teeth. Jack couldn't move as the entity assaulted him. The next morning, his daughter Dawn described having a nightmare in which she saw the exact same thing happen to her father. Also, Janet herself began to report being touched and violated by something unseen. The family was now living in daily fear. Here's the real question. If this entity was tormenting them to the brink of ruin, why didn't they just leave? Things got too much for the Smurls, so they packed their camper van and went to a camping ground in Honesdale, hoping for peace. But what they didn't know was that this thing wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to them, so wherever they went, it would follow. Finally, Janet was given the contact information of two people who had dealt with such cases before, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were well-known paranormal investigators. When they visited, Lorraine immediately sensed multiple presences in the house. She described 4 entities: an elderly woman who seemed confused, a younger, violent woman, a man with a mustache, and something darker than all of them, a demon that controlled the others. The Warrens urged the family to pray and use holy water. They also tried to involve the local Catholic Church, but the church was reluctant to intervene. Eventually, they brought in Father Robert McKenna, a traditional Catholic priest, to perform exorcisms. But even after several attempts, the disturbances continued. At this point, the Smurls felt abandoned. They couldn't live like this any longer. In desperation, they went public. They appeared on television, keeping their identities hidden, hoping the publicity would pressure the church to act. But instead of support, the story took a new turn. As soon as their case hit the news, some people offered sympathy, but many others began to doubt. Skepticism only deepened when people learned that the Warrens, despite claiming to have gathered evidence, audio recordings, photographs, and other documentation, were unwilling to make it publicly available. Adding to the doubt, Ed and Lorraine Warren already carried controversy from previous cases, where critics accused them of exaggerating events for publicity and profit. Then there was the parish priest who had visited the Smurl home. He admitted he hadn't witnessed anything unusual during his time there. Some neighbors reported never seeing or hearing anything unusual. The doubts grew even stronger after the Smurls eventually moved out. The family who lived in the house afterward reported nothing strange at all. No noises, no shadows, no signs of anything supernatural. In short, whether it was real or a carefully crafted hoax, the Smurl haunting sits in that shadowy space the Warrens were famous for. A mystery that has never been solved. So what do you think? Was the Smurl haunting real or just a story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to dive into more terrifying cases like this, make sure to hit subscribe, because the next story might be closer than you think.